Welcome to our presentation about the rewritten story of the seven deadly sins.
The original had a lot of problems, which we won't go in detail here because we already made a separate video about that. But in a nutshell, the plot and storytelling fall apart after season 1, the ending never comes, and there is terrible writing of women and glorified sexual harassment, both of which tells us what the author is. You can only see the personality of the author in their works. But we still saw enough potential in the story to rewrite it. So here it is.
There are several critical concepts in the rewritten story and the original story, such as the seven deadly sins, from wrath to pride, that the characters portray. Then there are the Ten Commandments, which obviously follow the Ten Commandments in the Bible.
Each story has a message, no matter how small it is. Stories can also have multiple messages. In this story, I want to convey two main messages. The first one is centrism is the best. This is based on the Rules for Rulers video of CGP Grey, or also on his other videos from the Dictator's Handbook. And it says that if the treasure can only come from people whose lives are good, then you have guaranteed that a society will thrive, that everyone will have a good life. And you can look at countries where the treasure does not come from hard work. Well, it does come from hard work, but the treasure is the natural resource itself. Like the mines in South Africa, the US, which now has a strong military and keeps bombing other places to steal their oil and other valuable materials. Tropically agriculturally based countries, Russia, the Gulf states, and other oil countries. None of these are great places to live. And the other message is that there will always be suffering, but also always thriving because of the seven deadly sins. We all have sins, and there will always be suffering. We'll always hate each other, and there will always be wars. But it's because of these sins that there will always be many people trying to stop things, trying to fix things, and so on. So humanity will suffer, but it will always keep thriving as well.
In our opinion, Escanor is the only good character in the original series. He is, of course, the son of pride. He's a narcissistic dictator and thus racist. Sunshine from the North relates to his name. Created a trauma for the commandments through his battle cry, which, in my opinion, was very traumatic. So I can see what they're going through. He has sun-based power. He goes supernova when he dies, which is a humongous and powerful blast.
That indeed was a good metaphor that I used. But another good point in my stories is that the fights are always believable. You see, in fantasy, and even in non-fantasies, it is important to make the fights believable. Obviously, the author gets to decide who wins. So fans shouldn't just be able to predict who wins just by knowing the author. They should also believe that the fight won because of reasons. And Squam Populous, a YouTuber, actually made a very good chart. And I'll show this chart. It shows two axes. One axis is the strength of the winning party, and the other one is the strength of the losing party. And there are four types of fights that can emerge. Toss-ups are very common fights, where both the strength of the winning as well as the losing party isn't that high, or is medium strong. So for toss-ups, you need character or strategy. What does that mean? Character means that you can finish this sentence. Blank one because they are more blank. An example of this is Escanor and his holy knights versus the giants. So why did Escanor win? Escanor and his holy knights won because they were more brutal. Note that the blank should not be lucky unless the character's whole shtick is luck. You can also use strategy, and with strategy you can get creative, or you have to get creative. Commonly used strategies are team synergy, surroundings, sneak attacks, sacrifices, and spots of weaknesses on the opponent. I guess you could also say that Escanor and the Holy Knights found out that the ankles of the giants were their spot of weakness, and that's why they won. For fly swatting, the strength of the winning party is much, much stronger than the strength of the losing party. So we know who's going to win. It's the one who is much, much stronger. So this fight doesn't have any tension. And that's a problem. But a fight doesn't need tension if it characterizes the one who's winning. In this case, there is a fly swatting. Melascula and Grey Road are so much more powerful than Ban, Gother the Doll, and the villagers. And through this fly swatting, we learn more about Melascula and Grey Road. David versus Goliath. Here, a very good strategy is needed from the losing party because the losing party's strength is quite weak, but there is no such example in this story. There is also the World Cup, which is a glorified toss-up. And here, Squam Populus and I also agree with Squam Populus, we say that both strategy and character is needed. So again, blank wins because they are more blank. You have to be able to finish that sentence. But strategy is also needed. In the case of this story, there is a World Cup fight, and it's the final fight against the Ten Commandments on the northern mountains. It has both strategy in that it has team synergy. They split up the best way possible, and it has character. Meliodas' group is more tenacious.
This story is Shout. In the beginning of the story, in part one, we can see a stone wheelchair that Elizabeth stumbles upon. It belongs to Gertrude the maid, showing diversity in the story. There is also a diversity of names. Fairies have Latin names, giants have Irish names, demons have Germanic names, except for Meliodas, of course, and angels and humans have more English names. Zintric is named after Centrism. The way the Demon Lord justifies taking Britannia represents Putin taking Ukraine, and see it's very similar. Both Russian Ukraine and the Demon Realm have the resources to make their people and economies thrive, but their resources are not correctly distributed because of course, corrupt leaders. Zeltis' inability to think represents what happens to people who are in dictatorships for too long.
Now we both gave the story a rating, and we'll both quickly tell you why we think we gave this rating.
I gave the story a 9 out of 10. It's a fantastic story. I think it could have gone in more depth in certain areas, but it is a brilliant retelling because it improves on what was bad in the original story and adds its own unique flair.
Well, I can definitely, certainly say that this story is so much better than the original. But that's not what's important here because we knew that this rewriting will be much, much better than the original. But
Yep.
so I actually want to rate it as a standalone. I give it a 7 out of 10, much lower because I do see some problems. Um, you may remember that Merlin's sloth sin is poorly shown. And I feel like I could have shown the sins of the seven deadly sins group way more clearly. And also for the Ten Commandments, I do have some very good uses of the commandment of murder, which immediately forces all battles to stop, or the commandment of adultery, where Melascula can just defeat an array of male soldiers. I think those are very good usages, but I would have liked to use more commandments, preferably all of them. Though I do think that maybe the pacing would have suffered from that, but it would have been cool to use the full potential. Other regrets I have are sometimes the cohesion is a bit weird. The jump from the first arc to where the group has freed Ironshire to immediately Diana and the giants, that is a bit weird. I mean, it's not that bad, but it could have been better in my opinion. And also, the World Cup fight is great because it is believable. But I feel like the final assassination of the Demon Lord seems a bit too easy. Like, it went a bit too flawlessly. I could have added a bit more tension or a point where it seemed like, oh no, this plan is going to fail. So yeah, that's my rating. I think it's a good story. But yeah, 7 out of 10. All
I
right.
stick with my rating. Go on.
Well, I guess that averages an 8 out of 10 then. A solid story, but not a goated story. Just a solid story. Thank you for watching. If you have any other points, you can leave them in the comments down below, or even questions. Now I'll be working on a new story, on a much longer story in Marathi, set in ancient India. And I, as a character, will appear there as the protagonist or the deuteragonist. So look forward to that.